Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Tapped Out Wrestling Podcast. I am, of course, Nick McDaniel, and as always, I'm joined by my buddy Myron.
Oh, did you have to cut the music off? I was jamming to that. Where'd you find that at, Nick?
Oh man, just our buddy, a friend of the show over at Punk Flesh, recorded. He's got 4 songs out now.
Wow.
I was watching, checked it out the other day on Apple Music. It's got about 4 or 5 songs. I think already released out.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's got a little Latin flavor, So if you check it out, just Google or go to Amazon Music, Spotify, pretty much anywhere music, Amazon Music, all that stuff. Punk Flesh. Do a search. A little bit different. It's got a little twist of taste, and of course, obviously, he did.
I like the intro, man. I'm interested in that now. I'm gonna check that out.
Yep, check it out, man. And lots of stuff going on this week. How about this, guys? It's gonna be one of the first shows in a long time, if hardly ever, super light on WWE as far as the main roster, Raw, SmackDown stuff, because lots of stuff happened. Lots of stuff happening.
It was must-see TV all week. Jeez. People tuned into Impact voluntarily.
Yeah.
In mass.
We're going to check it out for sure, man. And
not just aficionados and wrestling purists and wrestling connoisseurs like me tuned in. Everybody tuned in to that.
Yeah, I'm real happy. So, but hey, it's a lot of stuff going on. But before we get started, let's remind everybody where you can catch the show early. Lots of bonus stuff along the way. Got some cool stuff we're going to try out here down the road over at patreon.com/tappedoutpod. Again, that is patreon.com/tappedoutpod. Cool little segment I think we're going to try going forward. So I did a test run of it on YouTube. So hopefully you guys signed up can interact with us live while we're doing this new little kind of concept I want to try. We'll see, though. But make sure, how do you do it? For as little as $1, patreon.com/tappedoutpod. But I think that special thing's going to be a little bit of a higher tier episode.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
Hopefully weed out those people from the last time we had the live shows where they kept calling in and asking about Batista's wiener. So
that was a totally different thing. Let's
only have the executive members on here.
Yeah, exactly. No. But let's jump right into one of the hottest topics of the week, man. I mean, so obviously, guys, we talk about how we record on Tuesdays or Wednesdays, so it's prior to NXT and AEW Dynamite airing. So we're talking obviously about last week, Sting. It's Sting!
Tony Schiavone shows emotion for the first time in AEW history.
Yeah. Debuts. Stinger made his debut on Dynamite, and that, Winter's Coming was essentially, let's call it what it was. That show was a pay-per-view. Would you not agree?
Oh, yeah. They stacked up. They did a real good job prepping that card. I watched the show. I would say 80% of the show. Just watched it, didn't fast forward to it.
Mm-hmm.
That's about as big a compliment as I can give you on a wrestling show, folks. If I'm watching it, it's like really watching the wrestling. It's a big deal, especially for AEW, which has not been a show I've really wanted to see that much of in the past. But they did a good, captivating show, and they brought out Sting.
By the way, kudos to AEW for one small detail that, it's not small. I'm being sarcastic. Nobody knew.
They did a very good job
of hiding it.
Yeah. They did a good job with that, man. I got to love that kind of stuff.
So it was one of the few mark out moments in a long, long time, seeing Stinger walk out on, TNT, on Dynamite. So here's the thing, though. One of the successful things that Eric Bischoff always talks about is something is also successful when it makes you start asking the questions after. Now, good, bad, or indifferent, there were some questions that came to my mind.
Oh, yeah.
Over the last week. Number one, obviously, when Sting comes down, gets in the ring, has the face-to-face, it's a straight-up Nitro moment, by the way. Which is not an insult, and people will take it that way, but it's not.
No, I watched Nitro.
We all did, right?
Okay. It was a loss losing Nitro.
Yeah. And I think they're hoping this kind of recaptures some of that. But the first question that kind of pondered over the last week became, will Sting wrestle?
That's something I worry about. But apparently he wants to be a full-time main roster guy.
He wants to be a regular on the show. He's going to be, he doesn't want to be a show up once in a blue moon, which is fine. But the question about will he wrestle is because the last time we saw him wrestle, 2015 Night of Champions versus Seth Rollins, that didn't go so well. The buckle bomb.
Rollins was an unsafe worker. Just ask Becky Lynch. Congratulations on the baby, by the way, y'all.
Yeah. He barely finished that match, by the way, Sting, because it was such a bad, he did, however, if you remember the small details, he chose not to have surgery because they pretty much told him if he had the surgery, he was for sure done wrestling.
Well, WWE wasn't going to bring him back to wrestle.
No, they weren't going to clear him. I mean, clearly at this point, when they let him go and they pulled his merch and everything, it clearly
his contract just expired.
His contract expired, and they clearly just didn't have anything for him.
No.
So let's just get to the gist of the wrestling conversation. Do we want him to wrestle?
I don't. And I think in the WWE, Sting needed the Undertaker, because I wouldn't be happy seeing him wrestle anybody but the Undertaker if he were to wrestle in the WWE again. I don't care about him with Triple H again. I don't care. Taker, Sting, that's a match. So Taker's gone, so what would you want to see in WWE? He's got an opportunity in AEW to do something and build a final legacy for himself, to do something different, to wrestle with guys like Chris Jericho. How big is that? If Sting can put someone over on the level of the way Taker put over Roman, I mean, wow. He can make a guy's career.
Yes. The concerns there are multiples, but like I said, let's back up and say, for one, clearly in AEW, it's a collaborative effort. He's going to have more input into what he wants to do, what he could do, that kind of thing. So I think that's why it makes sense. I just don't. My only concern is with Sting wrestling is if he does, it needs to be a very low bump match, if that makes any sense.
You don't want the Saudi Arabia Taker Goldberg match.
No.
Where both guys get blown up and they look like crap, even though they're still maybe had something left in the tank. No, I don't want to see that. That's painful. I want to see Sting. I want to see the old Sting.
So I
don't want to realize my heroes are valuable or getting old.
Well, he's 61 years old.
61, yeah.
I mean, but if you give me Sting in a 6-man match with Darby Allin, Cody Rhodes, he comes in, either there's the bat or there's a couple punches, there's a stinger splash, and there's a scorpion death drop or leg lock.
Mm-hmm.
We always joke about give him the hits.
Yeah.
As long as it's not a lot of bumping for him. And listen, by the way, we don't know what shape he's in. So that's a huge part that we don't know. So that we'll have to wait and see. The second part beyond just wrestling is if it comes, what does this do for Dynamite? What does this do for AEW?
It puts them on a higher level. It puts them closer to a Nitro level. It makes them look more competitive. He's a legit legend. Okay. Right. There's not that many of those guys left out there. Jericho's still working. He can't become a legend until he quits working. Okay. But Sting is a legend.
Well, we've always said, Myron, needle movers.
Yeah.
You got to have a needle mover. And listen, if it wasn't clear to you before, and by the way, let me preface with this. This is not bad. Everybody, like, I had this conversation with somebody and they took it as bad. I'm like, this isn't bad. What I'm telling you is what's clearly being pointed out here now is that Tony Khan is going all in, no pun intended, and they're trying to maximize the potential ratings every week. Like, this is what they're going for. It's about ratings.
Is over. Giving people something dramatically different is over. Indie wrestling on the scale. What their mission statement was when they came out, but they've realized you have to be successful, you have to put out a wrestling program. If you want to draw more eyes in besides your audience, to get to that next level, you're going to have to do some of the same stuff that WWE is doing. You're going to have to do some old school things, bring in some old guys, things like that.
Well, it's names, it's eyes. Eyes are drawn to names.
Yeah.
He started the promotion. Let's be honest with you. The biggest move they made, and this is not an insult to the other talents, they signed Chris Jericho.
Yeah.
That was made to draw eyes. Over time, you've brought in guys like Miro, Brody Lee, FTR, John Moxley. Now we've said from the beginning, you needed a legend. Listen, and no disrespect to Jake Roberts and no disrespect to Taz, they are not Sting.
No.
And there's a connection there with TNT. With Nitro, Sting, that history. So I think there's a lot to that. Listen, COVID has us in a place where they're not doing live shows, they're not doing live events, and everybody forgets the fact that at one point they was like, "Oh, they're not going to do live events," and then Jim Ross was like, "No, we were going to do live events." But you're essentially boiling down to, at this current moment, wrestling is a television product. That's all it is at this point. So,
you have to sell ads and you have to sell pay-per-view buys.
Quarter hours, ratings, all of that stuff is to the forefront of what matters. And that's just it. So it clearly looks as that's what they're going for. They're just going to they're going to try to get enough legends and stars to just load up every quarter hour, because the last thing they want you to do is flip the channel to NXT to watch something over there.
Yeah.
So if you just keep, and we bashed everything about, oh my God, they ran a pay-per-view on NXT, on TV to draw ratings. Folks, this is what we're going to get. I think it happened on Mondays when it was Raw and Nitro. We were damn near getting,
Remember how hot it got there? Remember how they would build you the entire show to the main event.
Yeah.
The entire show would build to the main event, and you'd be so like, I can't miss this. I can't miss this. And you'd want to watch it, and you might forget about what the other guy was doing had you not caught as much of it. So Wednesday night's going to be crazy.
The concern would be, do you you ended up with so many people that you're peppering in there. Listen, Khan has been implemented. It's been said that he pays such close detail to every single quarter hour that, unfortunately, look what it's done to the women. They weren't getting the viewers in the beginning. They're down to almost nothing. So my question is, if you're Griff Garrison and Brian Pillman Jr. and you make it onto an episode and you're not drawing, do you proverbially get stuck on Dark? Now, because they've clearly proven they don't mind 16 to 20 matches on Dark. They'll do it and won't link. Now, I have heard a rumor that they're potentially talking about splitting Dark into like 2 shows, to where you'll have potentially like a developmental show where you have all those guys, and then they'll give another show to where it'll be like your main guys, so they can kind of even separate that out, which I'm all for, by the way.
Is this the one they're talking about using Renee Young and Mara Ronaldo for?
I don't know. That's so far down the road, man.
Please don't let that happen.
So my question again, let's get back to the topic of Sting here, though, is if the end of the day, if he doesn't pass the torch to somebody, first of all, does he need to? I mean, or is he just there just to draw eyes over the long term? Is he there to give a rub to somebody like Darby Allin, just standing there, sprinkle? They always say sprinkle the Hulk dust on. Is he going to sprinkle some Sting dust on Darby? But because my guess is, by the way, Sting's not there to pass the torch. He's not there to lose to anybody. Again, not an insult. I just don't think that's what he's there for. I think he's there to be the draw. So to wrap it all up, because we're going to run long if we don't. Good for Sting.
Yeah.
Kudos for him. Get some money. Go out on your own terms. You don't have to listen to what WWE. He clearly didn't want the Legends deal. He didn't want to be told when he could come in and work, what he was going to work. Yeah. So hopefully, again, be safe. If he is going to wrestle, minimize it down. We don't want to see, But like you said earlier, let's be blunt what this is, folks. This is the nail in the coffin of we're revolutionizing wrestling and we're changing the game. the game is what it is, and to draw that million viewers, they're going to have to play the game by the rules set by because the rules are made, and they're made by WWE.
Well, they've got another hammer coming tonight for those nails too.
Absolutely. We'll get there. Absolutely.
Shaq and Sting, folks. Does it say more nitro than that?
Yeah, I mean, it's just, listen, they're banking on people just being so anti-WWE at this point, bringing a Shaq, bringing a Sting. Honestly, I tell people, look, I'm going to go on the record because we recorded this obviously before Dynamite. They'll break 1 million views, but it's going to boil down to what? Sting, Shaq, the fallout from the Omega, which we're about to discuss next. That's it, go. They're people, because they've clearly proven the track record. They're not breaking 1 million with indie darlings. They're going to do it with Sting. They're going to do it with Shaq. They're going to do it with Omega. Kind of bouncing around. So they're playing the game now. I think they've learned that this is the game they have to play to be into the game.
Yeah, it's big time. You're in the big leagues now, guys. You're gonna have to do it. You have to follow some of the format that people are used to. Yeah. But I tell you what, man, this era of cooperation has just breathed life into new stuff, man. Look at that right there. Look at that picture. Tell me I didn't spend half the night last night trying to find some Don Callis looking glasses, rose-colored glasses on the internet. He was such a heel, man. Such a heel.
So clearly, if you did not watch Impact, you were probably one of the few, right, that did not.
Yeah.
It was last week on Dynamite, that was kind of the reveal of Don Callis and Kenny Omega working together, as is clearly AEW and Impact. But then the follow-up on Impact led us to start asking questions about this deal, this partnership. And it's funny, friend of the show, Gary Lamb, put it up on Facebook, and it's a very valid point. But partnerships only work when they're mutually beneficial. And the $1 million question that I had asked you prior to the show was, does working with Impact really help AEW? Because it clearly helps Impact, working with AEW, but does it work vice versa?
Well, if we were to make this like some kind of mathematic ratio, the bump Impact would get out of it would be hugely proportional to it would be huge to what they're going to get. The bump AEW gets, it's a goodwill thing. It's a dominate more time thing. It's getting my guys on. You got Omega on another spot. You got Tony Khan with his promo with the corpse of Tony Schiavone, and it was that part wasn't so good, but the Omega promo was great, man. They got themselves out there to more people. I mean, I would think the people watching Impact probably already watch AEW, but the people that watch AEW are not watching Impact on the whole, so it got them many more viewers out of the AEW audience. Regular wrestling fans are tuning in. Maybe people who gave up on Impact during Sting's 11-year run or 10-year run with him, or when it was just crap. Maybe they're going to say, well, this is legitimate again. Maybe this is something again. AEW, they just look at the good guys. They're like, we're the nice guys. We're going to cooperate with all these people. We're going to bring in all these people. Well, the thing is, it's easy access to trained talent who you don't have to put a contract on. I mean, Thunder Rosa, look at her. NWA. Bring her in, super trained talent, puts people in good spots, makes Serena Deeb the champion, put her over. That's good for the company. It benefited NWA and it benefited AEW. It's the best thing in their women's division. Has been done by Thunder Bros in the last
with NWA stuff, not AEW stuff. With NWA stuff. The perk of it was like, okay, let's start with what happened on Impact. Like you said, the Kenny Omega segment was very good, accomplished more than what I think he really wanted. He came off, Kenny, Omega, like a total douchebag, like a heel supposed to be. That's where they were getting him. And here's the thing, even on AEW, he didn't come off like that much of a heel. No. Now, I know he cheated to beat Moxley, and over time, he had done some heelish things. But that promo, accomplished, I think, all of what they had been trying to do for weeks. there. So that it did help. So, and you were correct. I guess the confusing part is because then on the Tony Khan segment, which, okay, listen, it was bad in my opinion. It looked cheesy. First of all, like, okay, he's not a good promo. And again, this is not an insult to Tony Khan, because we joked about this on off air that I said, look, I'm not a good promo guy either. Guess what? That's why I don't cut promos.
But it looked like it was shot like, you remember the old Tony Fox waffles and tire irons videos that NWA used to run during the.
It was shot to look like an old NWA, like TBS studio shot. That's what I hope that's what they were going for, because that's what it looked like. The issue was that it just looked bad, and it gave me this thing of like, okay, he was throwing around terms like I could buy the company if I wanted to. Well, dress the part. I mean, that was like, and I don't. That's not a knock. I mean,
well, we are used to the McMahons.
Yeah,
we're used to Triple H. We're used to people getting out of a car and looking like Vince that shaves 8 or 9 times a day.
Don Callis doesn't even own Impact, and he's always in the suit.
Yeah, that's
kind of what I think. That's, dress the role or dress the part.
Scott D'Amore's always in a suit.
So anyway, so now the other confusing part was, so does this essentially mean that, like, so if you're Impact talent or Kenny, I guess, because he's working with Callis, they're going to be the heels on Dynamite, but they're going to be the baby faces on Impact, and vice versa. So will Khan be the heel in Impact and be a baby face, because he came off a little heelish in his promo, kind of, sort of. But he, clearly on AEW, they're going to love him.
Yeah.
Well,
the thing is, Mr. Rhodes, you have heels now. You said you didn't want heels. You said that was a tired dynamic. But you have a heel now. Your executive vice president, Kenny Omega, has become a heel. Now y'all have to decide what to do with him.
Yeah.
How's it going to work out? You got to do something. Is he going to come back on AEW tonight and just be Mr. Golden Shower or whatever his deal was, and sweep a broom and stuff like that, and people not know what anything that's about? Or is he going to be a heel? Tonight's interesting. I want to watch it.
Yeah.
Success.
Absolutely.
That's what you do. You cut a promo and make me watch the show.
The challenges they will face in this partnership is like, could there be some good matches out of it? Absolutely. Yeah. We clearly have seen comments by the Bucks saying, hey, we can wrestle Motor City Machine Guns. We can wrestle the Good Brothers.
Oh, that'd be good. Yeah.
So you're going to get good matches, but ultimately the challenge comes down to this. You got to determine, it's not an invasion angle, or is it? Because if it is, eventually somebody has to lose. And when rival promotions are in on a thing, picking who loses is a bad fit. Now, I don't think they're going to go that route. I think they're going to go with the Kenny and Callis had a bond, which they explained completely on Impact, which was what I loved about the promo. They actually explained a lot. And by the way, a heel explained his actions. He justified them.
And he changed out the plate on the belt.
Yeah.
How cool was that?
That was cool. But like I said, why would you use the microphone? Well, he touched the father figure. He put his hand on it, and I just retaliated. That's what a heel does, by the way. They justify their actions because they believe it. But anywho, so the question being is that the route you're going? Because here's the thing. If it's supposed to be an invasion angle, Impact looked like a regular show with 2 other segments inserted in.
Yeah, the thing was, Impact was taped. The only really, really deal that they shot was when Rich Swann tried to go out that door, and the security guy told him he couldn't go out the door because the champion was here. And he's like, but I'm the champion.
Right.
Look at this belt. He goes, well, the champion's here. And then the guy, Josh, whatever his name, went out to get on the van to interview the guy. They could have shot that anytime.
Yeah.
And they didn't even have to say who it was.
Absolutely.
Remember that?
So ultimately, like I said, coming down to what's the end game, we'll have to figure all that out. But like you said earlier, man, if anything they've done, they've created we wanted to watch Impact. We want to watch Dynamite tonight to see what happens to follow up. And then so much so, by the way, if you want to talk about I almost said the impact on Impact viewership. So Impact doesn't really give viewership on Access, but what we could dig up on is so Twitch, which is it's easy if you know how to work your computer and you work Twitch, etc.
It's easy for us.
It's easy for us, absolutely. Their old record for a segment was 17,000 people watching a segment. 52,000 people watched the Kenny Omega segment. So
what, 3 times almost?
3 times, the number. And then we Googled because somebody put the full video of the show up on Facebook, and 58,000 people had watched it there. So
that's a pretty big deal, man.
For Impact, it's a huge deal, by the way. And like you said, tonight, by the way, why is Dynamite even more so important? Kenny Omega, Sting maybe will talk and explain some stuff.
To Tony Schiavone.
3, Shaq shows up to explain whatever.
And where's Shaq been training?
At the Nightmare Factory, exactly.
Right down the road from Nightmare Factory.
So it's a week full of wrestling. Yeah. A week full of wrestling that's not WWE related, that has must-see TV, and that hasn't happened, folks, in a long, long time. But that doesn't mean we're not going to talk about any.
No, I'm going to watch NXT tonight, too.
Well, you got to, Myron, because we're following up freaking Wargames, which happened on Sunday. Because if anything, WWE, somebody somewhere, and I read it, said that consistency is NXT's secret weapon. They are 100% right, dude. Their in-ring product is so good. They don't have to, and then this is not a knock on everything we just talked about, but they don't have to, rely on, swerves, turns, special appearances, a lot of things that promotions, when they're struggling, they dip into. They just don't. They always perform. They always deliver. And we go into most of their shows with high expectations.
I expect when I turn on a takeover that I'm going to see the best wrestling show I watch that month or the 3 months. I expect it's going to be much better than a WWE pay-per-view, hands down. Exciting. Those cage matches were brutal. New standard as far as brutality in a women's cage match, in my opinion. They outshined everything. These people seem to want to show off. They want to impress Triple H. At times, that wasn't great. It was a hammer shot. Oh, God, that was bad. Get rid of rubber hammers, crowbars, things like that. Not weapons you can't believe.
Right.
Okay? I get a toolbox. I get a toolbox spin out of the ring because you need a toolbox to put the ring together. You need some kind of tools. But
makes more sense that a toolbox is there than a hammer or like a baseball bat with barbed wire around it.
Yeah.
Or a kendo stick, yeah.
Yeah. It's more practical. You might have a chair. You might have a table, with some tools, hornswoggle, things like that could normally be under any ring anywhere. And then don't bring out a plier. Bring out a pair of pliers. Bring out something you could make it a little bit more believable. But it was a great show. There wasn't a bad match on this show. Okay? The strap match, I don't know why they just threw it all strap match rules. Okay? Where was Chris Nelms? Where was Chris Nelms to tell them how to have this match? Okay? Seriously. That's not a strap match. But it was a good match. I enjoyed the whole show.
Yeah. I mean, listen, like you brought up the women's war games. One of the things that I had seen, and it struck a chord with me, was it's so accurate. For a little while, we started losing faith in the whole women's revolution. But that group of women down in NXT, it's the revolution like 3.0.
Mm-hmm.
Lita, Trish, then there was the horsewomen group. Now this group of women, Rhea Ripley and all of those, down there.
How about Raquel Gonzalez?
Yeah.
Where did she come from?
I mean, Shotzi Blackheart. You can go on and on and on. All of those women down there now are just crushing it.
Yeah, and I know Cornette's been watching AEW, and he's not Impact. Too many letters. NXT, sorry. And he's been. I don't watch Shotzi Blackheart, and I don't watch Ember Moon. Well, he's missing out. Okay, little silly gimmick. Okay, riding in a tank with a helmet, a little bit silly. In ring, not silly. In-ring performance was solid in that match. There was not a bad in-ring performance all night, in my opinion.
Mm-mm.
I absolutely fell in love with Leon Ruff. Okay, I thought he was the so entertaining in that match. Guys, it's good stuff.
Yeah. Listen, you brought up Ruff in that match. Gargano obviously going over with the interference of Austin Theory joining him, I guess. I'm glad that Austin Theory's back in the mix. But I think, look, we like Ruff. Gargano, we're going to address a little bit here towards the end when we talk about something else. Priest is main roster ready. I mean, the character's got depth, the size, the look, you name it. It's all the above. I don't know how much longer he's there, but he's not on another show.
Intensity.
Can you imagine him versus Roman?
Oh, wow.
It's a good match.
Yeah. It's a real good match.
Yeah. Other good matches on that card, listen, Ciampa and Timothy Thatcher, if they had more storyline going into it, they're a different style, and they clearly are comfortable just smacking each other around. I think
it's been a while since I've seen that busted ear like that.
Yeah, he's crazy. I mean, it's just a crazy thing, but Ciampa never disappoints either, and that it always comes back to what we said right before the segment. It's like they always deliver, they're always consistent.
Yeah.
And then of course, before we move on, the men's war game. I listen. I clearly tell people all the time that I am not a huge Undisputed Era guy. Never have been. Now, but there's no denying that they deliver time and time again, especially in matches like this.
Well, they're Ring of Honor. We don't watch Ring of Honor. They look like Ring of Honor guys. They look like guys. They're smaller. They're technically good. But Kyle O'Reilly's been impressing the hell out of me. It's just being a tough bastard.
Yeah.
They put on a great show. Is it a main roster type show that you're going to want to expect to see in Madison Square Garden? I don't know, but I know when I watch, I'm going to be entertained.
Right.
Okay. They're always entertaining. They're good quality wrestlers. Good shows. I mean, Roderick Strong, Bobby Fish. Stay where you're at, man. You're the stars.
That's what I was going to ask you the next. Is like everybody who watches this match, but don't we always jokingly say, don't we say this after every War Games or every big match with the Undisputed Era? Is this the end of it? Is it time for them to be called up? Have they done everything they can do down in NXT? And we discussed this off air, and we both agree. We don't think so. Just stay.
They're killing it, man.
They could be the cornerstone of NXT for a very long time. We talk about Gargano, Ciampa. I'm like, just look, leave that base there. I mean, you got to have a base there.
Yeah.
And that's a solid base to have. Now, at some point, do you turn them? You have one or two of them turn. Maybe. I don't know. Maybe they just kind of become that group. Remember, they drift apart a little bit. They all go off and have their own little thing. But when one of them needs, they all pull back together, and they're there. Lots of good things with them.
They got a great faction to work against now.
Yeah, that's an understatement. And let's go ahead and address the elephant in the room, because Pat McAfee, by the way, has gotten praise upon praise.
2 matches. 2 matches for McAfee. Okay?
Yeah. Now,
where plenty of practice is in the promo.
Okay. He stunned me in his performances in both matches.
Yeah.
I'm like, because I in my notes, I'm like, I just can't believe this guy. They're like, oh, he doesn't even have gear, and he's not supposed to. He's just a football guy, right?
He's a punter.
He's a punter, right?
He came in,
But what you said, for CM Punk, cracked me up when I read this. I'm going to read the quote because he tweeted it out, and a lot of it has to do with circumstances. But everyone else on that show, NXT, should feel embarrassment, and subsequently, you said, feeling to better themselves at the fact that Pat McAfee is a better promo than everyone on the show. He then would go on and add that he's, the best thing on the show, not named Rhea Ripley.
Yeah.
Triple H praised him as well. And it's crazy because in my notes, you had talked about the punter thing. I said, he's a retired effing punter who's outshining guys who it's their dream to be a wrestler. This is this is all I've ever wanted to do. And I always kind of come back when I was like, look, this is not a knock across the board, but it does go to show you that dreaming, I'm gonna chase my dream, doesn't always beat the it factor and hard work, because Pat McAfee's using it, which is his mouth. He has it clearly.
And this is a situation where these pre-booked, like, drawing board characters suffer when they're in front of someone who organically has developed over the years a personality that's offensive. I don't know Pat McAfee. I don't really watch the NFL, but I wanted to smack the shit out of him. I wanted to see those guys put him through a table. He was a heel. When you make somebody angry at you and you want to see the good guys get over on you, you're a heel that's doing your job selling tickets.
No. He was
the
a
heel sell the
shit-talking
ticket.
punter. That's his thing.
The
He was a shit-talking punter.
Yeah.
And who
he's got a show.
Is that not one of the biggest heels on
yeah.
I'm a shit-talking punter. Now, he did tackle. That was a plus. So, but the thing that got me, that popped me the most, is on his non-wrestling product. He does a sports show the day after Wargames. He's wearing a neck brace, selling a wrestling angle on a non-wrestling product.
On a mainstream
sports show.
That doesn't happen.
People could probably take notes. Because we've joked about it. Like, I saw it somewhere, like, guys won't sell a knee that they got injured in the first match of a tournament. 2 matches later, they're working like their knee's fine. He's got a neck brace on the next day on a show that's not even a wrestling show.
Most people can't sell through a match, Nick.
Yeah, they forget.
Most people can't sell one body part through a match. And
would you think people would be insulted if you go, and that right there is how you're getting outshined by a guy who's a punter?
Yeah. He's a performer.
Sure.
And
he gets it.
He was a performer first before he became a wrestler.
Yeah. So take notes, fellas. Take notes. That's all I'm going to say. But let's get moving along before we get too long here, because we got a lot to cover. I wanted to address something that, a friend of the show, show attorney, friend of the show, we had this conversation. He asked me, and it was something I really wanted to address about Bray Wyatt and the Fiend and the whole mix. The question was, because, let's first say, like, Bray Wyatt versus Randy Orton is like the second biggest feud, essentially. It honestly could be the first biggest feud on Raw as far as feuds go. Obviously going to be sitting behind, obviously, the title chase where AJ's going to wrestle Drew McIntyre at TLC. But storyline-wise, I would argue that it's more important, this feud is. And they faced off on Raw. They did it. By the way, they did the switch when he changes, the lights go out and comes back on, and he changes from Bray Wyatt to the Fiend. Perks of not having the live crowd. Yeah. Thunderdome.
If you got the opportunity to do it. If you can produce stuff now, do it. Make it TV. Make it big TV.
But it led me to this conversation where it was like, has the time for, like, magic and supernatural powers, like, has it passed?
Well, he retired on the last show. Supernatural powers retired on the last show. Or can somebody else do it?
Well, clearly the Fiend can. I mean, and that's the question, though. Is it in an era where we're all about, like, hardcore, like, diehard wrestling fans want, like, the best matches and they want work rate and all this kind of stuff. Is the Fiend and his magic and his powers, are they too silly? Like, or the question is, when they're done right, a la Taker, you had a conversation we're talking about, does it still have its place in wrestling? Because maybe him being the only one doing it now, does it make him special? We always talk about wrestling's the buffet.
Yeah.
Is he the dessert at the table that we're like, look, we know, but it makes him special because he is.
Well, I mean, if this was working, they'd be selling a lot of Fiend merch on the website, don't you think?
Exactly. And we want our Like,
We
listen,
got
we want
Fiend
the
Christmas
listeners.
ornaments. They got Fiend socks. They got Fiend belts. They got Fiend shirts. They got Fiend masks. If this wasn't working for some section of the audience, maybe it's not working for me. Maybe it's working for that 12-year-old who's asked for a Fiend mask for Christmas. Maybe it's working for somebody who enjoyed that kind of wrestling stuff. Maybe it's working for a guy who couldn't give a shit about Bray Wyatt and Randy Orton in a wrestling match, but you start throwing the magic on and they love it again. Something's working. They put it at the top of the program. So
this was, like I said, this was a topic I wanted to put out to the listeners and ask, and you can answer at tappedoutpod, tappedoutpod@gmail.com. And of course, if you're watching on the Facebook, thank you, Facebook, for leaving the episode up for the whole week. Appreciate that. But hey, comment on the Facebook comment section right below the video. Does it have its place? Do you like it? Do you don't like it? I'm just here to curiosity. I personally like it because it's just something different. I think if you take it out of Raw, then you literally use becoming a match, just a bunch of matches a la every other wrestling show on the planet, right?
Starts looking like Ring of Honor, and I don't watch Ring of Honor.
Well, they'll never mistakenly that, but anyway, so let us know what your thoughts are again at tappedoutpod, tappedoutpod@gmail.com, or right there into the comment section. Let's scroll along. We're going to jump into the indie section this week. But before we get started in discussing all the stuff in the Indy Talk, special commercial from our friends up at Southern Honor Wrestling. Check out, they've got their big show coming up this Friday, December the 11th in the Action Building. But check it out right here.
Attention wrestling fans. Southern Honor Wrestling returns to the Action Building in Canton, Georgia for SHW 22.
We say it every month here at GB. We're always part of something special.
Yes, we are.
Join us Friday, December 11th, as 12 men will compete in a one-night SHW Championship tournament.
Only one of them can be champion.
At the end of the night, one man will be crowned the new Southern Honor Champion. Also, we'll hear from former champion Joe Black. Plus, in tag team action, the beautiful bald besties take on Lethal Poison.
Those besties are bald. They're beautiful. These guys are the real deal.
Tickets on sale at 5 p.m. Doors open at 7. Bell time at 8.
You never know who might walk out of here the new SHW champion.
Come witness the future.
What a moment we are experiencing here tonight.
Absolutely incredible.
Wow. SHW. This is our wrestling.
Man, we're fired up. Friday, obviously, up at the Action Building. It's Southern Honor Wrestling 22, the big tournament to crown the new champion. I'll see you there.
Yeah, I won't be there. I work in retail, people, and even though I have 3 vacation days left this year, they're like, we're just going to give you the money because there's nobody to work them for you.
It's how it goes, man. Unfortunately, it's going to be a can't miss event. Other than that, I mean, listen, it's not just going to be a great show. Rob Rod will be there. We'll be there. Talents who are not even on the card are going to be there. Like, everybody's going to be there to see, because this is going to change the game. Stephen Platinum, friend of the show, will be there as well. But this long term will shape Georgia, the indie wrestling scene for a while to come, I think.
I agree. Hey, folks, you got to see this. Okay? You got to see this. Get you a mask. Come on out. It's going to be worth it. Tickets are on sale at 5. Doors open at 7. This will be a very interesting show. We are starting a prayer vigil now for Mr. Hansen. Spoken prayer requests. Holy Bear Hansen, we know you can do it. We're behind you. We believe in you. 1 like equals 1 share.
Yeah, absolutely. So, check us out again. Like I said, we'll be there. It's a can't miss show. Go back and listen. If you missed last week's episode, we broke down all the picks for the tournament. We broke down in the matches, who we thought were going to win. We gave you who we thought the favorites were, etc. Last week's episode in the archives. Go back and check it out. And I also put it up on Facebook. I pulled that little clip out and put it on Facebook on the Facebook feed as well. So check it out. Southern Fried ran Landmark. Drew about 100-ish is the number we were given. I did end up watching it online. We didn't go. Listen, it was what it was. We know why.
We got
Um,
family shit, folks.
but
Yeah.
well, tons of
It
other
happens.
reasons. But happens. Everything looks good. They crowned the new champion. Griff Garrison's the new champion there.
Man,
Kudos to
hot
Griff.
kid.
He's on fire, man. He is absolutely on fire. Lots of pluses, lots of the progression story of Todd and David, keep going. Everything looks positive. The only thing I had to say about Southern Fried is they have to find a new home, because obviously with that number, they're too far from home at Landmark.
They got to find a home close to Monroe, man.
Yeah.
They got to find a home down in their wheelhouse. And I don't know what that's going to take. I don't understand the dynamics of what they need to do to get the place they want. So that's a internal machinations thing. I don't get the details of, but I know when they're close to their base, they do a lot better on ticket sales. The shows are still great. It's just the tickets aren't there. They're a Monroe show, and the people of Monroe love that stuff. It's still real down in Monroe.
Yeah, absolutely agree with you, man. Other things I wanted to discuss was AWE and, of course, Anarchy, both running shows on the 26th and 27th.
Uh-huh.
Both are, just keep their momentum going. AEWE, by the way, looked great coming out of their last show. And I love that these two shows happening because of the way the awards are. By the way, I don't know if you caught the message I sent. I started constructing the election process for the awards. So the process is starting to roll, but I love the fact that the way it's being done is these two shows will be in consideration for shows of the year. Matches of the year could possibly happen on these shows, because we know both of these cards can deliver, those promotions can deliver that type of show. Here's what I want to ask. We adapted out of necessity this year with the Georgia Wrestling Awards, History Awards, that we pushed it into January. But my suggestion going forward is that due to the system that it's so easy to do, are we not better off maybe that this is just the way it is going forward?
Yeah, guys, I think a lot of it's going to depend on how much impact these last two shows have, because you're going to be the last two shows on anybody's mind. There's going to be a lot of voters at both shows. A lot of influential people at both shows. AEW is bringing in a massive amount of talent for their final show of the year. Hardcore Hell never disappoints. If those two shows come out and run late in the year and get an influence on some of the awards, it's going to make an impact.
Oh, yeah.
Will next year people book more shows in December? If those shows do well in the voting, it's a very good possibility they would. So we'll see.
Listen,
it looks like
we're fully aware people aren't booking their shows to win awards. That's not what they're doing. But I do think it helps the fact that they will get that exposure and they are in the consideration and those type of things, knowing that people aren't going to forget because it's 52 weeks before the awards come up again.
Yeah.
So that's just me. But anywho, that's the Indy Talk this week. Lots of stuff going on. Hopefully we'll see you out at Southern Honor this Friday. I know there's some potential for some stuff Saturday as well, which we will check out. But today I wanted to go a little old school, something we haven't done in a long time. And I wanted to say, man, let's do the 3 on tap. We haven't done that in a while. Good, bad, or indifferent. We're going to talk about doing this down the road if it's received very well. Let us know if you'd like the 3 on tap at tappedoutpod, tappedoutpod@gmail.com. I wanted to do this potentially going forward on our Instagram page or on Patreon or something like that on its own, but we thought we'd give it a test run again here and see what people think of this kind of the segment. Number 1, this week the topic that I came up with, top 3 game-changing pay-per-views. And what that means is it's not about like what was the best pay-per-view, because that's totally different argument. What I meant by is they hold a significant importance in the history of wrestling, and it's not the matches themselves necessarily alone that do that. It's literally that pay-per-view holds a special place, and we're going to explain each one. So let's.
These pay-per-views really changed the landscape of wrestling.
Correct.
They changed the landscape of how money is made in wrestling. and they changed the pay-per-view business for all of cable television.
Exactly. So let's go ahead and get started. And number 3, you can go backwards. Number 3, obviously, Bash at the Beach 96, the big, Hogan turn. And, listen, it was that heel turn was, like you said, was the beginning of the New World Order, essentially. I know everybody's like, no, the beginning was when he came in, when he turned, that began what we now know as the 83 weeks, right? It's when WCW jumped, and they were never successful as they were when NWO was formed, basically ran roughshod through WCW. And would you agree it also brought the end of that was the, I know we talked about heels and baby faces. This is the beginning of the gray, like shades of gray.
Yeah, there are parts of the NWO that I'll never forget for that. But what this pay-per-view did is it put the WB pay-per-view up to, the WCW pay-per-views up to a level of the WWE. You got more you got actual giant buy rates on the WCW pay-per-views. And that's, the other things, McMahon wasn't able to block these from coming to air like he was with some of the other shows in the past. This is the start of an era, a huge money era in pay-per-view wrestling.
Right, and it was, like I said, it was, to me, a lot of people will say ECW was already running, obviously, but like on a national scale, the chaos that would become of Nitro with the NWO coming in and running roughshod would eventually lead to the Attitude Era by the WWE to counteract it. So again, to me, that's why it's so significant. But there's still another show that's going to stun a lot of people that I put on this list.
Mm-hmm.
And that would be Starrcade 83.
Yep.
It makes the list because essentially, guys, I know it was on short circuit, everything, but it essentially was the first major pay-per-view event. Like people don't realize, like WrestleMania wasn't until like a year and a half later.
Yeah.
Post this, and the card was great and everything. It was like I said, broadcast on closed circuit. JCP, Jim Crockett Promotions, did excellent business with it. But to me, there's significance. It essentially began the pay-per-view business model.
Yes.
That WCW, WWEF at the time would go on, and it essentially would use right up until the network. So if this card, if Starrcade isn't successful, does Vince ever even dive in and try WWE to try WrestleMania?
No, you guys, this was back when the whole NWA, Jim Crockett Promotions, was the king. You would have to go to a place like a movie theater and pay to get in to watch this pay-per-view over closed circuit television. It wasn't broadcast over the air. Cable TV was in its infancy. This is a different thing. It's something new, and they started making money on this. This is the reason Vince invented. There were pay-per-views that they came up with just to block the WCW, NWA, Jim Crockett Promotions era to get on the cable television. A lot of WWE's mainline pay-per-views were just to keep the WCW, NWA pay-per-views off cable television.
Okay. But think about that. But this is even pre-WrestleMania, so there is no pay-per-view. To me, the significance is this is the birth of pay-per-view.
Pay-per-views wouldn't exist without this.
But so then, if the birth of pay-per-views is number 2, what could be number 1? Listen, folks, there can only be one king, and as far as and that, of course, is none other than WrestleMania 3.
Yes,
it's the pay-per-view. I think that when you think, and again, guys, we're talking about from changing the business landscape of pro wrestling, putting 90,000+, you can't see me, but I'm throwing air quotes up, 93,000 people in the Silverdome. Hogan, Andre, obviously the Savage, Steamboat, on and on and on, all the things. It's not about the matches, though. Ultimately, what it boils down to, Myron, is that WrestleMania's iconic main event that drew that record crowd, it essentially, we argue that what was the main event of that show a lot of people got like, oh man, the best match on that card, Steamboat and Savage.
Nobody cares.
Listen, the draw was Hogan and Andre, but they brought in Aretha Franklin. They had Bob Uecker, Alice Cooper, on and on and on. So at the end of the day, I always like to say that pay-per-view, WrestleMania 3, was the birth of the real sports entertainment. I know WrestleMania brought in Lauper, etc., but 3 is the thing that shoved
the
WWE
giant
to the
scale.
forefront.
The giant scale, the assault on American popular culture, the fact that everybody knew about this. It wasn't just for wrestling fans. The kids now, I guarantee the kids in middle school and elementary school, they go to school to talk about wrestling, and the ones that want to talk about wrestling, and they probably have to hide and talk about it or text message about it.
Back then he did.
Back then, you wanted to be the first motherfucker to see this so you could tell your friends you know about it more than they do. Even if you had to wait till it came out on videotape, this was a big deal. These videotapes, they would rent out. You had to wait in line or reserve a rental just to see this. This was a cultural phenomenon.
Absolutely, and that's why it sits atop our charts. And, hey, that's the 3 on tap. Bash at the Beach 96, Starrcade 83, and then WrestleMania number 3. That is 3, 2, 1. Top 3 game-changing pay-per-views in the history of pro wrestling. If you agree with the list, awesome. If you don't, let us know at tappedoutpod, tappedoutpod@gmail.com. What's your list? Comment in the Facebook section. We always appreciate that. But what else we also appreciate is subscribing to anywhere and everywhere. Apple Podcast, iHeartMedia, Spotify, Amazon Music, etc., etc. YouTube, if you're not watching us over there, subscribe, like the Facebook page, watch us there. Anywhere and everywhere. Leave us a 5-star rating and review if you can on any of those platforms. We would greatly appreciate it.
I still pop, man, when we pop up on Amazon. I mean, I'm using Amazon Music to listen to the podcast that's on Amazon, and I'm like, oh, well, we've arrived. It's so cool. And I tell people, I talked to somebody about the podcast at work the other day. They're like, well, where can we hear you? I'm like, where can't you hear us? Nick has got us out to every single audience in the world.
If you can't find us, you're not trying. That's what I tell people.
You might even trip over us. We're so many places.
That is true. Before we go home, there's something that, it's just funny that there's people we've met along the way on the show, everything bad happening. And I've learned a new term. Instead of saying its ugly name, so Facebook doesn't grab you and try to block you or whatever, just call it the vid. Just don't say the name. It's the vid.
Facebook, we're not putting out bad information.
Yeah. So during all this, the era of the vid, lots of bad things. You can be negative. You can be just burnt out on a lot of things.
People are angry.
People people are just, it's not, people aren't happy. People are angry. Listen, it's not just the vid. It's the elections. It's all this crap that's going on. But something this week jumped out at me in a good way. And we wanted to take a special moment to, call it out. Listen, Frankie Paris, friend of the show, always, you jokingly say it, right? He's one of the nicest guys, that you're ever going to meet.
Yeah.
And he is, by the way. It's a fact. I mean, anybody knows him will tell you that. But I've gotten to know Frankie for some other obviously reasons down with work and things. But I saw something that was posted and it just touched me. It really did. And I said, look, Ryan, we got to talk about this on the show. So Frankie's got a little girl, his daughter, Perry, who is a huge wrestling fan. We've discussed it before in the past, other things. But Frankie had been selling on Pro Wrestling Tees, which is, the best, indie wrestling, shirt company.
We sell our shirts there.
We sell our shirts there. Absolutely. He was selling it's a very unique Air Paris shirt. It uses the old WCW font logo looking thing.
Beautiful shirt.
One, if you ProWrestlingTees.com and then search for Air Paris, buy the shirt. We suggest it, especially for the reasons we're about to tell you. They had raised some money. Obviously, they took all the profits for the shirts, and Perry, his daughter, basically donated the money because she wanted to make a part. She wanted to make a change and try to make somebody else's Christmas better. And as we were talking about it off air, I'm like, this is a prime example of two great human beings, Frankie and his wife, raising another great human being.
Man, y'all are doing a good job with that kid. I'm impressed.
Yeah.
I am impressed. And the kindness and people at Christmas time not having something, and a child that's willing to not even think about themselves, but go out there and do something like that. That's amazing.
Yeah. Typically in an era when a child could have been selfish and said, she could have made her Christmas better, she chose to do the right, I don't know if it's the right, it's the great human thing to do to make somebody else's life better. So kudos to Frankie and Susie for, raising such a good kid who's, by the way, a huge wrestling fan, as we mentioned before. Great job. Kudos to you guys. So
thanks.
Well, that's all I have for this week, Myron. You got anything else?
I think I've ran slap out, Nick.
All right, man. Well, what's the old saying, brother? If I've got nothing and you've got nothing, what time is it?
It's time to tap out.